BLU has sent us the Life One X2, the successor to the budget-friendly Life One X. It features a 5.2-inch Full HD display, a fingerprint scanner, and a build with a metallic finish, a 16-megapixel main camera with a face detection autofocus, and a 8-megapixel front-facing camera sensor with flash. There's also 4G LTE. Now, for $150 off contract, you can get the variant with 2GB of RAM and 16GB of internal storage. But for $50 more, $200 off contract, you can get the variant with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage. You heard that right, guys, 4GB of RAM in a $200 smartphone. That's pretty crazy. All we need to do to unbox the Life One X2 is slide off the top of the box to reveal the phone, which I'm gonna set off to the side for now. There's a bunch of accessories in the box, as there usually is with BLU smartphones. We have a micro USB charging cable, a US quick charging 3.0 wall wart, a pair of earphones with removable tips and music playback controls. There's a SIM card installation guide sitting on top of a quick guide, a silicone case lies below all of that, and the very last item in the box is a screen protector. Now we can take a look at the Life One X2 and rip off the protective plastic. Upon first impressions, the phone feels a little bit cheap. It doesn't feel like metal, but you can tell BLU was trying to make it feel premium. The metallic finish is convincing. The back cover can be removed to provide access to the dual SIM card slots and micro SD card slot for expandable storage. Another nice touch is the metallic buttons. They are much more tactile and clicky than plastic buttons, plus they hold their integrity longer than plastic buttons. The Life One X2 features a 5.2-inch 1080p LCD display with a 423 pixel per inch index. It appears very bright and vivid for an LCD panel especially. Very good viewing angles overall. This is a pretty good looking panel. But where the phone really shines is in the performance department. Despite the mid-tier Snapdragon 430 1.4 GHz octa-core processor, the phone features 4GB of RAM. That is a lot of RAM for any smartphone, let alone a $200 smartphone, and I would say the phone feels really snappy. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into a smartphone's performance beyond the amount of RAM. The processor is one of those things, as is the software. Obviously, I've tested a lot of smartphones, most recently the iPhone 7 Plus. This phone doesn't feel as fast as those high-end smartphones like the iPhone 7 Plus or Galaxy Note 7, but it does feel a step above the others that are in the same price category. And overall, I like what BLU has done with the software. They have left it alone for the most part, although the app drawer has been completely redesigned. It's in a list view, so you can scroll through your apps in alphabetical order or search for an app up top. Also, the quick settings have been slightly redesigned. They have a very flat, circular appearance that kind of reminds me of an LG smartphone, but I kind of do like what they did here. The app drawer, not so much, but every other aspect of the phone resembles stock Android Marshmallow. There is a fingerprint scanner built into a physical home button. It unlocks the phone pretty quickly. It's not the fastest on the market, but it's far from the slowest. My only gripe with this setup is the on-screen navigation buttons. I'd like to see BLU opt in for capacitive touch navigation buttons and just ditch the on-screen nav buttons to increase the screen real estate. The X2 does feature a large 16-megapixel camera sensor with face detection autofocus and an f2.0 aperture. There's also an 8-megapixel front-facing camera sensor. Image quality is decent. You can capture some good shots with the sensor and most budget smartphone sensors in general, but you're going to need a lot of light. Most budget smartphone sensors perform poorly in low light scenarios. This phone features an f2.0 aperture, which is pretty darn good, but you can't always trust what you read on paper. These are all test images from both the front and rear sensors. You can be the judge of the quality. I mentioned earlier that you can remove the back cover of the Life One X2, but unfortunately you cannot remove the 3000 mAh battery. With that said, the battery should last a full day of moderate usage, but I have yet to test this phone in detail, so I can't really comment on the battery performance. The speakers sound quite tinny upon first impressions, though they do get pretty loud and are located on the bottom of the smartphone as opposed to the rear, which is the worst possible place for a speaker. So as you can imagine by now, the main selling point of this smartphone is the performance, is the 4GB of RAM. While you can opt in for the cheaper 2GB model, I would recommend the 4GB model, especially since it's only $50 more. Plus, you can tell your friends your phone has 4GB of RAM, which is probably more RAM than they have in their smartphones. It's approaching laptop status. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description to purchase the BLU Life One X2 with 4GB of RAM and 64GB of onboard storage. And if you're looking to save some money, you just need a phone and you don't really feel like you need the performance boost, I'll include a link to the model with 2GB of RAM as well. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, guys, I would love for you to hit the thumbs up button, maybe subscribe if you're brand new, As always, I am BoHD from PhoneDag.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you right back here in the next one. See ya.